in the fall of 1992, I was a new bride and super excited about that. My husband's a few years older than me, and he was in a really stressful and hectic and job that he worked a lot of hours. And because of that, he didn't really expect me to work. He kind of would have rather me been home when he was home, and I was fine with that because I was having a ball, you know, running around and decorating and planting flowers and, you know, planning little things for me and my girlfriends to get together. So that was a lot of fun. And we got married in October. And that spring, of course, I didn't want any children for a few, you know, 3 or 4 years. That spring, I was running to the top of the steps in our townhouse, and I got extremely dizzy. And a couple days later, I was unloading the dishwasher and I started feeling a little nauseous. And of course, it didn't take my mother long to diagnose me. And the following December, I had my first beautiful baby boy. And 3.5 years later, I had my second beautiful baby boy. And that beautiful boy, that first one, he was just a dream. He slept through the night, always happy and easily entertained. And when that second little boy came along, he was a little different. He was a little more high energy and high maintenance, and he didn't really like anybody except his mom. So he was more like an appendage right here for a few years. So after a few years of that, I decided it was time for me to get back in the workforce. And I went to work for a large company out of Cincinnati and loved it. Went to work as an advisor because I have a relative in the business. And I worked there for almost 8 years. And about that time, as those boys were getting bigger and getting a little more into sports and getting a little busier, I started feeling that nagging feeling in my stomach that I needed to be home more, especially when it came to sports and getting a ride here and there, because like I said, my husband, Dusty, he was pretty tied up at work a lot. So I left that company on good terms in case I had to go back, and I decided to go to work for myself as an advisor. I thought, you know, I've been doing it for this company for a long time. Certainly I can do this for myself. It can't be that hard. So like I said, I left there, had a little office in a doctor's complex, and I just started working with attorneys. Actually had a contract with the Ohio State Bar Association for a few years, just meeting with the attorneys and talking to them about their disability benefits and long-term care and health insurance. And from there, I worked with the dentist and chiropractors, anybody I could see through the day, daytime work, so that I could be home of an evening with the boys. And over those last several years, I had just learned a lot from the women that I had worked with, and I found that I really had a heart for especially single women and widows. My great-grandmother lived to be 104. My grandmother was 86. My mom is still super healthy and super energetic. So I put together this little book called Ladies with Loot. And like I said, I've got a pretty good response from it. I work with men, women, married people, single people, widows, but my heart, like I said, really goes out to women that are single and have spent the majority of their life balancing a lot of plates, taking care of everybody else, their kids, their family, their home, the grocery shopping, the laundry, packing lunches, that kind of thing. They typically put their own finances on the back burner. And men don't normally do that. And it doesn't mean anybody is right or wrong or indifferent, but women typically around the age of 50 or so, sometimes sooner, it seems like they come up out of a fog and the kids are grown and they've got a little more time to focus on their own finances. So that is a little bit about me. So I've been in this business for a little over 21 years. It was February this year, it was 21 years. And I love it. I love it. I love what I do. I like the people I work with. And just last year, I wrote this book for women in sales, and it would apply to pharmaceutical reps, furniture sales, real estate, anything like that. And it is really just chock full of a lot of mistakes I've made over the years and what I've learned from them. And what I believe is this would really help a young person, a young lady, or a woman that is newly in the sales business, any type. Like I said, it's got a lot of trial and error in here, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. A lot of stuff I learned the hard way. So with all of that, I was going to share with you guys today just a little bit about what's going on as a result of this pandemic. But before I start on the hardcore stuff, does anybody have any questions or anything they want to tell me or ask me?
I was going to ask you, it seems like probably a lot of your job, maybe you'll talk about this, probably a lot of your job right now is part therapist, right? Or part, talking people off the ledge as far as everything. I mean, every day is a different story. There's a lot of panic and concern, more so than there's ever been, probably, right? Is that
You
true?
can say that again, Justin. You're absolutely right. I work with a lot of safe money. Mm-hmm. So I probably don't have as many calls as some. You know, we've got a lot of money under management that's fluctuating. Mm-hmm. But because I tend to work with a little bit more conservative women and women over 50, we don't have a lot of, real volatility and aggressiveness. But I realize that for some people, there is a lot, for sure.
Yeah.
So Erica, it means bonds and IRAs and things like that. When you say safe money, help us understand what that means.
Well, I work with a lot of big life insurance policies where the money is safe and it doesn't have that 59.5 rule, people overfunding those. Because for one thing, there's no regulation. They can put as much money into it as they want every year. And we've got that cap on the IRAs, whether you're contributing to a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. And, in our eyes and, a lot of people that I work with, it kills two birds with one stone. And then I do a lot of annuity business too. I realize that not everybody is a fan of annuities, but I don't have any complaints. I have clients that are more than happy to get a slightly lower return in return for being able to sleep at night, and not having to worry about that ticker and if it drops 30%. I'll just dive right in, just as an example, what a lot of people don't realize is that if you've got $1 million in the market and it takes a 50% dive, so now you've got 500,000. Some people might think that they have to have a 50% return to get back up to $1 million, but 50% of 500,000 only brings you up to 750,000. So you typically have to have a much bigger return than some people realize. To get back up to your $1 million, you're going to need 100% return. And I don't know if there's anybody on this call, but I personally have never seen 100% return. Anybody ever heard of anything like that? 100% return?
Maybe Apple over a few years, or some stock.
Maybe
like
one stock.
100% 1 year is pretty high.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn high, especially for the whole year. Yeah, I would take it. But, we talked about doing a PowerPoint and stuff for this call, but I really would just rather this be an open discussion. Like I said, I want to share some stuff with you guys, but if you want to write it down, you can, but I thought maybe afterwards I would go ahead and send you some of these handouts, some of the stuff that I'm going to be going over, if that's all right. Mm-hmm. And the first thing, just because you mentioned that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Secure Act. And that was in January, and they made a lot of changes to the traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. First of all, if you have a traditional IRA, typically you had to be 70 and a half, or when you turn 70 and a half, you had to start taking required minimum distributions. And they've now raised that age to 72. Same thing with the Roth. Now, with the Roth, there are no required minimum distributions, but they have now changed the rule to where if you're working, and even if you're working part-time, that you're able to contribute now, where before you weren't once you hit that age. So that's helpful. Now, about this market going up and down, I got a whole lot of notes laid around here. For people that have a 401k plan, and I realize that that may not be a lot of what's on this call, but even for just a traditional IRA, you know, it's probably not a bad idea to consider that Roth conversion right now for a couple of reasons. You can convert the vested part of your 401k plan from the traditional 401k over to the Roth 401k. And of course, you're going to have to pay the taxes in that year. But given the state of this economy, you know, we've got the unemployment rate, which is extremely high. We've got the market bouncing around like a pinball. We've got an election year that is off the chain, so to speak. And for a lot of people that don't know this, we're still in the middle of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So what that means to you right now is everybody's tax bracket is just slightly lower. It's about 3%. And that is going to terminate in December 31st, 2025. And starting January 1st, our tax rates are going to go back up. So if you had ever considered doing any kind of Roth conversion from a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, or even in your 401k account from a traditional 401k to a Roth 401k, now would be a great time, because you're going to be paying a lot less tax, especially if your account balance is down.
You said it expires in 2025?
December 31st.
Set to.
And, you know, 2026, January 1st is when they go back up. And I don't know about what you guys think, but I'm just hoping that they go back to the original tax brackets. But given everything that's been going on and the trillions of dollars that we've had to borrow just to keep the economy going, my guess is these brackets might go up a little higher. Would you guys think that?
Yeah.
What do you think, Dave? I think they would. I think they'd probably go up a little higher.
May depend on who's in office too, right?
What's that?
It may depend on who's the president, right? To a certain degree.
I would absolutely agree 100% with that. You know, and it doesn't seem like either party is doing much to help their self right now.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I turn the TV on, it seems like there's some other bizarre story, and I just can't watch it. You know, I got to look at the facts at the end of the day. I can't listen to the, you know, to the media and the scare tactics and that kind of stuff. But I did want to mention that you need to keep in mind, if you're entitled to an eligible rollover or distribution type thing, that you can put that directly into a Roth, directly into a Roth IRA. It doesn't have to go into the Roth 401k. So in other words, if you have lost your job and you're no longer employed and you're rolling that over, it can go directly to just a Roth IRA. And again, I realize that we don't probably have a lot of that on here. I think from what I gather, when I'm there in the office, everybody in Office Key is, besides the staff, is an entrepreneur, so to speak. Is that right?
Some of them.
So there's not a lot of big corporate.
There's some big corporate, some, you know, local people for bigger operations. It's a mixed bag. There's a little bit of everybody.
Okay. I need to get around more. I need to get out of Westchester and start coming down to some of the others. But I guess the most important thing right now, as far as the business goes, is the PPP loans. And of course, yesterday was the last day to apply for that. And, you know, again, that's going to be something that I'm sure the rest of the country is going to have to pay for eventually. Somebody has to pay the bill. And again, I believe that the taxes are going to go up. And this doesn't have to be a discussion just about Roth IRAs, but for those of you that don't understand what that is or the difference, a traditional IRA is money that grows tax deferred and has never had taxes paid on it. So it's either held out of your paycheck with your employer, or if you are a a business owner yourself, then it may be money that you have set aside and written off your taxes. Nevertheless, it's money that hasn't had taxes paid on it. You're going to have to pay taxes on that money eventually, and if you pass away, whoever inherits that money is going to have to pay the taxes on it. So that's a traditional IRA. A Roth IRA is a retirement plan where you pay the taxes up front. You pay them now, and we're in a lower tax bracket right now. Everybody is. And one good way to think about that is, if you were a farmer, and you had to purchase grain, would you rather pay tax on the seed, or would you rather pay tax on the harvest? Because it's going to grow over the years. So you can pay now, like the Roth IRA, or you can start paying the tax when you start taking distributions in retirement. You're going to pay tax on the seed, or you're going to pay tax on the harvest. And if you're a person that believes you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, then a Roth conversion might not be ideal for you. But the tax brackets are so wide that 90% of the time, the retirees I'm working with, they aren't dropping down a tax bracket, and they're having to take those distributions, whether it is to supplement their retirement or because they turned 70 and a half and had to start taking required minimum distributions. And they have to pay the tax, and it's considered earned income at that time. So again, I'm a real firm believer in, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep. So if you don't take anything else away from this call today, it's not what you earn, it's what you keep, and taxes will eat up everything if you aren't careful. So before I move on a little bit, do you guys have any questions about that?
That was a good explanation. Appreciate that explanation of Roth versus standard IRAs. How about simple? At Office Key, we do a simple plan, and maybe many of the businesses that use Office Key would be less than 25 employees and do a simple. I'm trying to think what simple stands for, but it's an IRA that you can take advantage of if your company has less than 25 employees. I believe that's correct.
You are correct, Dave. And there is two different ones. There's the simple IRA, and then there's the SEP. I think that's what you're trying to think of, and that's a simple employer plan. The simples and the SEPs, they're different. And the how the business owner contributes is what makes up the difference. But that money is absolutely not taxed. It's not taxed yet. And that is, again, is money that you could probably convert over to this Roth and pay those taxes now while the account balance is down and while we're in a lower tax bracket. So good point. Because you're right, the small business plans, they're typically, it's a great way for the employer to, offer something to the employees. It's money they're going to be spending one way or the other. They're either going to pay it in taxes and give it to Uncle Sam, or they can offer it to their employees. And I think that that's it also helps with turnover, and it helps, like I said, employee retention, and helps also attract a lot of good talent for sure.
And when employees reach age 65, it makes it easy for employees to have something that they, some retirement that they can fall back on.
Sure.
In addition to Social Security.
Yeah, supplement their retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree, but I would go back to the would you rather pay tax on the seed or would you rather pay tax on the harvest?
Yeah.
Pay it now or pay it later when it's probably going to be a little more.
Has that advice and that thought process been consistent even before the pandemic, or has the pandemic changed your advice or your strategy that you've been giving your clients?
No, Justin, I'm glad you asked that. That has always been the strategy. That's always been the, my belief. And I belong to the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. I'm a member of MDRT. That is the general consensus. The tax rates are not going down, especially not now. This just happens to be a better year than ever for conversion if your account balance is down. Because again, when you convert that money over, you've got a smaller amount, a smaller gain. So it's going to, again, be less tax out of your pocket.
Right.
There's an order of money. I'm going to try not to make anybody's eyes glaze over. But, the order of money is these 401k plans and the simple employee pension plans and 403b, which is for nonprofit organizations. It works just like the 401k. It's still pre-tax money. When you take money out of those plans, once you hit 50.5, whether it's to supplement your retirement or if it's because you're required to at what now will be age 72, then you're paying tax on the full amount, every penny. So if you want 10 grand and you're in a 25% tax bracket, you probably need to take out 12.5 to get the 10 grand. Not to mention you have to pay state tax on top of that as well, because that's never been paid either. That's usually not much though. Now, any kind of plan like that, you're going to pay tax again on the full amount. Now, if you look at CDs, brokerage accounts, mutual funds, real estate, those type of investments, when that money comes out, you're only paying tax on the gain, just the gain, because you already paid tax on the principal. Then our next bucket would be any kind of Roth IRA. It comes out tax-free because you've already paid all the tax on it before it went in. HSAs, that type thing. So again, I would say to somebody who is looking to remodel their kitchen, buy a new car, build on, those type things. If you're over 59.5, then a lot of people don't like to use that money that they've been growing tax deferred for all those years, and they don't want to have to pay the tax on it. But the sooner you pay it, the less it's probably going to be. And for this year, the CARES Act eliminated that 10% penalty by the IRS. So anybody under the age of 59.5, if they take money out of a qualified plan, like an IRA or the 401k or the 403b, money that hasn't been taxed, they can take out up to $100,000 this year and still have to pay tax on that money, but not have to pay the 10% penalty. Because normally anybody under 59.5, once you spend pre-tax money, the IRS penalizes you 10% for doing so. We see that happen a lot. We're going to see it a lot more as this trickle-down effect happens. But people that work for companies and take loans against their 401k or loan against their 403b, and then they lose their job, well, then that's considered a distribution. So now they have to pay tax on all of it, plus the 10% penalty. So back again, if you're in even a 20% tax bracket, so there you're paying tax, the 10% on top of that, and a little bit of state tax. I mean, you're barely getting over half of your money. So that's kind of tough to swallow, but a lot of people don't see that big picture. They just see that, they've got money built up there and they need to spend it. So for anybody that was planning to do that or needs that money to live on now, I would recommend not taking it out of your savings and your checking and savings and hands-on cash. Maybe you need to utilize that money that hasn't had taxes paid on it yet. That's the theory. It's not for everybody though, folks. That's not for everybody. You got to see somebody and make sure that that is, suitable for you. You need to sit down with an advisor, maybe even your accountant after you sit down with your advisor, because a lot of these things, there's a lot of variables. So
I was going to say, hearing you talk makes me glad that people like you exist, because there's no way the average person can keep up with all that stuff and understand it properly to make the good decisions that you probably advise your clients to make.
well, thank you for saying that, because there are a lot of moving parts. We got a younger crowd on here, so I'm not going to get into all of the, all the woes of, turning 72 now, but just one real quick one. I'll just give you an example. I'm working with a gentleman down there close to the Westchester office that is a retiree. He is 72 now, but he had to start taking his distributions at 70 and a half, because that law was just passed in January. So anybody that was 70 and a half by December 31st, 2019, they have to, they fall under the old rules. So this gentleman has a pension. He has Social Security coming in, the max amount. His wife retired from UC. She had an IRA of her own, grew up to about a 500,000. He had a little over 500,000 in his. And these weren't the kind of people that, that earned $250,000 a year. I mean, these accounts just grew over time. And then again, so he's got this pension, it's a few $1,000s a month. He's got this Social Security, he receives a few $1,000s a month. Then all of a sudden he has to start taking a required amount out of his IRA because it's never had taxes paid on it. So between that and his wife having to take her required minimum distribution, their adjusted gross income was so high that they had to start paying more for their Medicare. And that's going to change too. So back to the moving parts thing. It doesn't just cause you to pay tax on it. You don't just have to pay the tax and take the income. It also, once your modified adjusted gross income goes over a certain level, this guy is taking $60,000 a year just in required minimum distributions between the two of them, because it's based on your age. It's a percentage of your account based on your age, which also goes up as you get older, because the government wants that money spent and those taxes paid on it as soon as possible. So that money goes, that accumulates between, her account, his pension, their Social Security, and puts them in a higher tax bracket. So now they're giving back more of the money than they originally would have had to if the money had not have been pre-tax. And a lot of people don't realize that your Medicare costs are based on your income as well. And that's tiered. So this guy is paying, $278 a month for his Medicare, and it's the very same Medicare Part B that everybody else has that pays $144 for it, $144.60.
So you said Medicare is based on income, so that's even Social Security income and dividend income and other things. Okay.
Yes, half of your Social Security. Non-tax, interest, non-tax, that includes municipal bonds. A lot of people don't realize that. That includes municipal bonds. They're not exempt from that calculation. So again, back to paying the taxes now and paying on the seed versus the harvest. If you're going to have a lot more income from it, you've got the Social Security coming in. If you've got any kind of pension, or you're taking money from other accounts to supplement your, to supplement your income during retirement, there's a good chance that you may end up also paying more for your Medicare. It's a lot. It's a lot. And my goal is to get with some of these women and head them off at the pass. Men too, but especially women, because I don't think they, again, they don't take the time. I'm certainly not, picking on anyone. I just don't think that they make the time because they're taking care of families or family members. And it just seems, with my experience, men will make the time, or they'll do it at work, or they'll talk about it more, and women are balancing a few more plates. So if I can get to them a little sooner, and we can start with that Roth IRA versus the traditional, Or a lot of companies now offer the Roth 401k, like we were talking about. We're used to as just a traditional. You can talk to them about contributing to that, paying the tax now and just getting used to that money being gone. Then maybe by the time they retire, if they pull out 10, 20, $30,000, maybe they get to keep that money as opposed to giving back, 20% in taxes and a little bit more for state tax. And it's not considered earned income, so it doesn't affect your Social Security that can be taxed, and your Medicare can go up. So if I can catch them a little, a few years before retirement, 50 or so, sooner was even better. But
do you find yourself, I think this is probably an industry-wide problem, or just a social problem in general, that people wait too long to meet with people like you? Is that like, are your new clients, are they often approaching retirement at that point, or do you make an effort, or do you have luck getting people that are, millennials or, 20s, 30s, where there's still plenty of time? Or maybe it's just all over the place, mixed bag.
It's getting better with younger people, with millennials. I think their parents are in their ear, a little more now, and they just have a lot more, incentive, I don't want to date myself or anything, but I didn't turn on the computer every day and ticker being running across the top, or some kind of investment guru popping up on my phone every day. So I just think they're a lot more knowledgeable now. So it's coming around, but you're right. There in the beginning, it's usually people that are approaching retirement or within a few years, or sometimes within a few months. I think people, sometimes there's it's just a mentality. I think they feel like they have to have millions of dollars to warrant the help of an advisor in some cases, or maybe they weren't talked to about money in their home, and they just don't talk about money, period. They just don't talk about it. So they don't go to see an advisor until they need help or there's something that needs done. But like I said, that's slowly changing. But again, I feel like if I could get to some women a little sooner, it's not about, it's not about being greedy, and it's not about, wanting to just have your own thing, especially if you're part of a couple, just wanting to have all, your money separate, that type thing. It's just about being proactive. We already know that women live longer, and they're making they end up making a lot of the financial decisions, so they need to be a little bit more educated. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that, we're getting that across to take the initiative. How am I doing on time? I really didn't stick to the script
12:44. We're good. We got about 15 minutes left. You have a question?
All right.
Erica, my wife and I, we find that we are spending a lot less on restaurants and airline tickets and other vacation expenses. So, if we're typical of people that have been able to maintain their employment salaries or wages, and they're not spending on restaurants and airline tickets and things like that, they probably have a little bit more disposable income right now, and maybe thinking about what's going to happen in later years when they don't have the salary coming in.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that, especially with that additional pandemic pay. There's people making more money now than they've ever made in their life. I've work with a dentist office. The dentist is wanting to go back to work. He's got about 17 employees. They don't want to come back. They're used to staying home. They want to stay home with their kids and do things and ride out this unemployment and the additional pay. Some of them have never made that kind of money. He's trying to decide, do I just need to hire new people, or what am I going to do? Because of course, with that paycheck protection plan, if you're not using it for payroll or office expenses, then it's not forgiven. So do we need to review that? Do we need to talk about that paycheck protection plan course, yesterday was the last day for that, but I figure that you guys have been beat over the head with a lot of things.
I think it's
That's
been
what
out
I was
there
telling
enough,
Dave. This is more about a recovery talk than it is about where we are, how we got here. You know, it started in Wuhan in December. Here's how it exploded. Here's why, you know, here's how it got to be so bad. Well, this is why it affected. I kind of figure everybody's had enough of that. So I just really wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do as a result of this. Again, it's a great time to contribute to your Roth IRA or convert dollars that are in a traditional plan that haven't had taxes paid on over to a Roth. In most cases, again, don't just leave this call and, you know, call your broker and say, hey, move that money over. Make sure you sit down with somebody to do the numbers, because that's important. There's big IRS penalties for not filing the right paperwork and not, you know, following the process. But some of the things we can do to get a little handle on you know, this volatility, like you said in the beginning, everybody getting a little scared and not knowing what to do. I've got a little list here I thought we'd go through. I think first of all, you need to determine your risk or your continued risk, and if you can, how much risk you can handle given the circumstances now that you know and can see an account go up and down and sideways. Moving forward, do you want that to happen again, or do you want the possibility of that to happen again, or how much of your money can you take that much, you know, that type of risk with? So I would say number one is just determine your continued risk for sure. And like I said, this is just about getting a little bit more control back, because we know that people don't know what to do. Some brokers are saying just, you know, just stay the course. And others are saying, hey, we've got options. We need to do this, this, and this. But again, it just applies, you know, it applies to the person and their risk tolerance and their age bracket. How far are they away from retirement? How much can they stand to lose? How much do they need to, you know, for their monthly income? So I would guess, and like I said, I'm not picking on women. I'm just saying this is what I noticed, that they take advice from unqualified people. Like, oh, my brother-in-law does this with his money and it does really well, so I'm going to do what he said. Or I'm sitting at work, there's a woman beside me, she reads all kinds of finance books, and she said that I should put my money in this and I should do this, so I'm going to do that. Or my dad told me never to sell this stock as long as I lived. And I'm certainly not picking on any of those people, but women, again, seem to be the first ones to take unqualified advice because they don't want to take the time, or they feel guilty about taking the time to go sit down with an advisor. You know, they don't want to take time away from their kids. They don't want to, you know, they've got too much to do between, maybe not at this time, but in the past, it's been ball games. You know, like I said, those little boys, they're 26 and 22 years old now. So I don't have any ball games anymore. But, you know, it was Little League, All-Stars, travel ball, fall ball, club ball, AAU ball. I mean, it was a ball game. I've been to every soccer field, baseball field, and then my older one raced motocross. So I know what that's like to not have, you know, a whole lot of time, and you're getting your socks and underwear out of the dryer because nobody's had time to put them away yet. So I think that's why women tend, their finances are something that go directly to the back burner, or they just do whatever the person that's sitting in the cubicle beside them says, or they, like I said, they've got a brother-in-law that seems to be, you know, pretty savvy with the market, so they'll take their advice. But I don't think that taking an hour out of your day once or twice a year to sit down with an advisor is neglecting your family. I think if anything, it is absolutely helping your family. You know? Yeah. You know, hopefully nobody on this call has had to do this, but there's a lot of kids that have had to help their parents over the years. You know, My grandfather just passed away in January. And prior to that, I was looking after him because I was the chosen one. Him and my mom bickered a lot, and his nerve didn't take that. My grandmother passed away unexpectedly a couple years ago. So I started going with him to a few doctor's appointments, and that was all it took. Then it was full on dependent. And I'm certainly not complaining about it. I learned a lot over those years, of the last 2.5 years. But I'll tell you, I don't want my children to have to take off work to take me to doctor appointments. I don't want my children to have to miss their kids' ball games. I don't want them to have to be inconvenienced if I have a long-term illness or can't take care of myself. So because of that, I'd like to think I've got plans in place if I fall and have a stroke tomorrow. And you do not have to have thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to warrant the help of an advisor. So that's my message. It's, try to focus a little bit more on keeping your money. It's not what you earn, it's what you keep. You probably don't build your own house. Most people don't. Most people don't work on their own cars. I mean, they might, tinker with a few little things. You don't put your own fillings in. You go to a dentist for that. So I would recommend that somebody see a professional to help you, strategize and come up with a good income plan with your money. Let a professional help you. And just because you go to one doesn't mean you're obligated to work with them. If you went to a doctor that made you feel uncomfortable, then you would go to a different one for the same thing. So it may be that you have to interview a few advisors to find somebody that's suitable for you, or, can see your vision or understands you or makes you feel comfortable. Got to make the time to do it.
Right.
So that's my first action step. Back to that, determine your continued risk and what you can live with and without. Number 2, anytime you can minimize future taxes. And like I said, I had a little plan here to go by. I got a little off track there in the beginning, but if you can minimize taxes, people just can't see. Dave, would you agree that people just don't realize the impact of taxes sometimes?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
For sure. All right. And then number 3, I would do what it takes to ensure that your foundation is solid. And if you learned the hard way over the last few months with your small business or in your personal life, you need to have more of a backup plan and more of an emergency fund, then I would get started. Just like Dave said, there's a lot of people that, that are getting a tank of gas to the month right now. We used to get a tank of gas every 3 or 4 days, or 5 miles to the gallon or 25 miles to the gallon. Now it's a month to a tank of gas. So you should have a little extra money right now if you're still getting, paychecks or the unemployment, the pandemic pay. If you're getting that kind of money and you still can't really go anywhere or spend much of it, as long as you're not addicted to Amazon, this is a great time to start an emergency fund, so that if this ever happens again, I can't imagine this perfect storm ever happening again in our lifetime, but you never know. We've also had murder hornets, giant dust clouds. I can't imagine what's coming next, quite honestly, but yeah. I know I want to be prepared for it. So just in making sure that you've got a solid foundation moving, or at least working toward one, and a written plan. Just like goals, you got to have it's got to be written. It's got to be something that you can look back on, because if it's not written, then you can't track it. You don't know if you're on target or not. And it doesn't have to be anything super sophisticated. Maybe it's something on a notepad beside your bed that you just look at before you go to sleep, once or twice a month at night. But if you don't write it down, then the chances of you following through with it are pretty slim. So determine how much risk you can take moving forward. Minimize future taxes. Folks, I just can't say that enough. I'm really trying to drive that home. I think I have. And make sure you ensure a solid foundation, you know, just have a written plan and then go talk to somebody about it and say, how can I start this? Where do I start? Because, you know, a lot of people just don't know where to start. I would not have known where to start if I wasn't in this business. I wouldn't know where to start when it comes to, you know, if I wanted to, I don't know, if I wanted to build an office building, or if I wanted to have a building where I leased offices to small business owners. I'd have to go sit down with somebody and say, okay, where do we start? Help me make a plan. What do I do first? What do I do next? And how will I know if I've fallen off track?
That's good. So I have a question,
That's my
Erica.
story, and I'm sticking to it. You know, I did want to tell you guys a funny, some of you may know this, but Warren Buffett, of course, the fourth wealthiest man on the planet, he's a fairly conservative investor. A lot of people don't realize that. But he just said this again not too long ago, that you never know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out.
That's pretty good.
So I think I was going down this road earlier and I got sidetracked, but back to the women and some people taking unqualified advice. They don't know how much risk they're exposed to until the market drops 30% in one day, because they've taken advice from somebody else, or maybe even it's an advisor that they took the advice from that said, hey, your money belongs in these funds due to your age and the amount you have here. And that doesn't mean that person was wrong or anybody did anything wrong. It just means that you need to know. You need to know where your money is and how much risk it has. Otherwise, when there's a 30% drop, you didn't know you had that much exposure. And maybe that's okay with you. That, you know, a lot of risk and a lot of exposure isn't necessarily bad for some people. It's just really important that you know, where your money is and how it's growing, and especially, you know, the tax qualifications. That money, when you get older, you're going to have to pay on the full amount, or just the earnings, or is it tax-free, which is what we want. We want to try to get everything tax-free because taxes are only going up.
Well, we are just about out of time, Erica. So that was perfect timing. Way to sum it up. And like I said, I second my comment that I'm really glad there's people like you in the world that help us regular people figure these things out that are incredibly complicated and constantly changing. So thank you for imparting your wisdom on us. Thanks for your time. And I'm sure if anybody wants to reach out to you afterwards, they should know how to get a hold of you. We can connect you if you need to. I know you had put an offer out for some books. If I know Terry, you talked to her about it, and if anybody's else interested, I'm sure you guys could coordinate that. We're happy to help with that as well.
Well, I appreciate you having me. I hope there's something in there that was helpful for everyone. I really wasn't sure exactly. I do seminars and workshops all the time, so I talk in front of large groups. That doesn't bother me. I'm happy to do it. In fact, I like it. That's why I always start with a story. I feel like it helps create a little bit more connection, and it's hard to gauge that virtually. You know, when I'm in the room with people, then I can tell who's getting it and who's not, and so it's a little harder online. So again, I no matter what, I try to start with a little bit of story, just to, you know, hopefully there's something in that story somewhere along the line that resonates with somebody. And I just didn't know for sure what we were looking for on this. I wanted to definitely talk about some recovery steps, you know, and what we can do to take back control, because I think everybody's heard enough of where we were and where we are, and, you know, how bad it is. But, you know, IRAs, tax qualified or not qualified, I think that's something that everybody needs to start hearing, you know, and if we just keep saying it, it eventually will sink in for some people. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody. Hopefully it was helpful in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's recorded. We'll probably, with your permission, we'll probably put it on our YouTube channel as well. So if anybody else wants to access it, they probably can. Is that okay with you if we put that out there or on Facebook or something?
I don't mind. It's not structured at all. Like I said,
Okay.
I had a little plan, but once somebody mentions something, then
It's better that way
you know,
anyway. That's how we like it. Just talk through it.
I thought discussion might be helpful. Everybody might be ready for a little bit more
Yeah.
face to face instead of a bunch of slides
Right.
and stuff.
Right.
So
Good deal.
yeah, that's fine with me if you guys can stand listening to it again, or if you want anybody to hear it.
Well, we want other people to hear it is the point. So good deal. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It is 1:01, so we're a minute over, but thanks again to Erica. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Hopefully the people who weren't able to will catch the video, and we'll see you guys all soon. Hopefully next month. David,
All right, take care, everybody.
he'll be there next month. So thanks guys. See ya.
Thank you.
See
Bye.
ya.